When we think of family, we normally imagine a warm home and loving individuals. Sadly, not everyone has a nice and stable family. Thousands of children around the world grow up without the help they need. Fortunately, many caring people eagerly await the opportunity to adopt children. Even with a smile, you can't tell how someone's feeling inside. You don't know if they're happy or not. A juvenile boy has the bravery to interrupt a judge in court and speak about his adoptive foster family. Care may be a wonderful yet difficult experience. Before becoming a parent, one must first learn to foster a child. On August 13, 2018, Sarah Kozad was in court with her husband and 2 foster children. A judge decided whether Sarah could legally adopt the children and become a mother. Sarah's entire family sat in front of the court awaiting the verdict. It was now up to the judge to decide whether Sarah and her husband could adopt the 2 youngsters. Then, out of nowhere, Deshaun, the older boy, rose up and did something unexpected. Errors in the courtroom caused tears from Sarah and her husband. The court process is long enough without adding the anxious weight of the judgment. Sarah wished the day had gone on forever as she waited for the judge's judgment. After all, this 26-year-old's future as a foster mother of 2 children was uncertain. Sarah's lifelong desire was to foster and adopt children. This day was crucial in her life. Sarah met Stuart Shank, her future husband, 7 years before this crucial court hearing. She didn't hesitate to tell Stuart that she wanted to be a foster mother. 7 years later, Stuart and Sarah sat in court together, expecting to adopt 2 lovely boys. Sarah's always wanted to adopt children, so this day was a dream come true. It's odd to bring up adoption on your first date. Sarah's desire to be a foster mother was so strong that she couldn't stop talking about it. Surprisingly, Stuart received the news well. "I was impressed with how Stuart handled it," Kozad remarked in September 2018. They were a fantastic match. It's rare for couples to decide to adopt on their first date. This seemed to prove Stuart and Sarah's compatibility. They married in 2014 after a brief romance. Their honeymoon was the first thing they did after getting married. After the trip, Sarah and Stuart began preparing their journey to become foster parents. Sarah was so excited to be a foster mom that she almost forgot her age. She always wished to adopt a child younger than herself. After all, she lacked expertise dealing with children her own age. She'd always pictured adopting a child and creating a family with her husband. So eager to start the process of becoming foster parents, they began adopting and rearing children assisted with their schoolwork and social lives. Most of the children they fostered were infants. Initially, they solely fostered newborns and toddlers as recommended by their social worker. After all, they were both young. For the weekend, they had to look after an infant named Michael. Michael, age 3, spent a week at Sarah and Stuart's residence instead of the 2 days originally intended. They looked to be bonded with the infant and finding it difficult to let go. Regardless, Sarah and Kozad understood that being foster parents matched their personalities and position. The couple agreed to house Michael for a few days. They had no idea that 3-year-old Michael would drastically change their plans. That weekend became a week, and then months, that time into years. "Love what matters," wrote Kozad, didn't even notice the time passing. Sarah and Stuart didn't plan to keep Michael for long, but they immediately grew fond of him. They were supposed to watch him for a weekend, but it grew into 2 months. Someone else soon visited them. Deshaun, Michael's older brother, startled Sarah and Stuart. This was the first time the family met. We can't possibly explain this lovely moment without crying. Deshaun raced up to his tiny brother, grabbed him, and hugged him for several minutes. Sarah and Stuart looked on envious of the brother's joy. After viewing this, Sarah knew she had to act. She couldn't let them split up. Again, Sarah and Stuart's only option to keep the brothers together was to take them both in. Sarah hadn't intended to adopt a 10-year-old boy. She never imagined adopting a preteen because she was so young. This would go against all her ideas. So she'd be 13 years older than her foster child. Sarah and Stuart had no concept what it was like to foster an older child, especially a teen. When Deshaun was 10 years, his age was difficult for the new parents. Sarah realized that chatting to Deshaun might not be such a huge deal. After all, knowing the youngster made things a lot easier. Sarah had good reason not to adopt older kids. Her Her expertise and experience were insufficient to foster an older child. But she also realized she couldn't allow the two brothers to be apart. Deshawn's age wasn't the only hurdle. Sarah and Stuart also occasionally babysat other children, which made things much more difficult. The young couple adored helping others and were always ready to lend a hand when required. They fostered 14 children in total, providing him with love and support during difficult times. Stuart and Sarah always wanted to help kids in need. They couldn't stop at one child, so they took in as many as they could. They wanted to help the kids and reunite them with their birth parents. Sarah took some time to reflect on the incident and consider her next course of action. She had to make a tough choice, but she did. Luckily, she had her blog, Love What Matters, to express herself and decide what to do next. Whenever possible, we support reunification. The best aspect of fostering is seeing parents fight to reclaim their children, Sarah blogged. Reuniting lads and preserving their future seemed more vital than Deshawn's age. Sarah had clearly chosen to make an exception. Seeing the two brothers reunited made her realize how vital it was to foster or adopt an older child. In looking at Michael and Deshawn, Sarah and Stuart decided they needed to live together in a safe household. They decided to make an exception and adopt both. They soon found themselves in an unexpected scenario. They had to follow the adoption process or the two brothers would be divided again, which Sarah and Stuart didn't want. After a year of living together, Sarah and Stuart decided to adopt both boys. The court would decide whether or not to allow the adoption. Although Sarah and Stuart worked hard to achieve their aims and ensure the boys' safety, the adoption process took far too long. Despite their efforts, it took 6 months to get things moving. The two had to be patient through the case. The lads were ecstatic to be finally together, but they also had to wait a long time to see if it was real. This took years. Sarah said on her blog, 2 kids, one of whom is now a teenager, was going to be a challenge for this young couple. Adopting one child is difficult enough, much alone 2. Despite the challenges, Sarah and Stuart were determined to succeed. Despite the sluggish progress, the family became closer and the brothers seemed happier than ever. Sarah documented their journey on her blog, detailing their challenges, difficulties, and outcomes. This entire incident impacted the young couple greatly. It taught the kids patience and persistence, and the value of love and family. Sarah and Stuart adopted Deshawn and Michael. They seemed like a whole family. The couple wouldn't give that up, no matter how long the court process took. Like most things in life, there's always something wonderful on the other side. They spent days worrying over the adoption process, but it paid off. On August 13, 2018, they finally learned what had become of their family. The ultimate court date would determine the fate of their hopes and efforts. Stuart and Sarah would be Michael and Deshawn's parents. The pair was relieved to see the conclusions of the ordeal. The day was so special that everyone in court cried. Everyone around Sarah and Stuart was relieved when they finally adopted the boys. Something else made Sarah sob in the middle of the courtroom. It was an unexpected event that involved Deshawn. The older brother, we know everyone is excited to know what occurred in the court. So let's get to it. Luckily, someone captured this event in the courtroom. Do you think they all agreed that this adoption should go forward, the judge said on tape? Sarah and Stuart were waiting for the court proceedings to end when the unexpected happened. No one usually expects people to speak out when the judge asks these questions, but not this time. "Yeah, they all love us," Deshawn remarked unexpectedly. His surprising response made everyone in the courtroom grin, and some even cry happy tears. But they didn't realize he had more to say. Just when everyone thought the court case was over, Deshawn decided to make everyone laugh moments afterwards. Deshawn had a heartwarming comment to offer. "We adore our entire family, is the best. I'm glad I have them. They raised me. Well, they were the best," he said, making his parents cry. Deshawn's surprising speech drove Sarah over the edge. She sobbed in the midst of the courtroom, as did many others in the audience. Sarah and Stuart's love for their sons was evident in their feelings. Also, Michael and Deshawn felt loved and grateful to be part of such a caring family. Sarah and Stuart's desire to adopt both Deshawn and Michael proved their affection for the boys. Their efforts had finally paid off. Deshawn was so grateful for Sarah and Stuart's devotion that he continued, "If I could wish for anything, I would desire to adore these individuals forever." The court was filled with emotion at this point. No one could believe such a wonderful narrative had come from a joyful end. Michael and Deshawn had joined a family and would always have a secure place to return. Nothing could convey their feelings at the time. Sarah and Stuart were so overjoyed that they decided to host a party. The parents and their boys were overjoyed about becoming a family. The couple's surname, Shank. Deshawn was so excited he chose a middle name. Sarah recommended Star to him. He defies every cliche of an adolescent boy. It was time for them to start over. This fresh beginning made everyone so pleased that they just wished for the family's continued happiness and health. Sarah and Stuart say their lives have improved since adopting Deshawn and Michael. They now have a lovely family and a bright future. Besides, they attained their long-awaited aim. Sarah and Stuart opted to keep fostering even after adopting 2 kids. Then in September of the following year, they adopted a 14-year-old orphan. During this period, the couple was being trained for fostering a young victim of sex trafficking. The pair was anxious to learn more and help another child, but the duty came with special training. Sarah used Love What Matters during their adoption experience. It's sad that young teens sit at social workers' offices or shelters for weeks or even months on end. Sarah and Stuart kept going through training to prepare them for adopting and fostering children from varied backgrounds and experiences. Their enthusiasm for learning and helping children grow. Some would believe the adoption process is too difficult or living this way too exhausting. But Sarah and Stuart enjoyed it. In the long run, they couldn't picture living any other way. "No youngsters should be grateful for a loving family," Sarah wrote. She was determined to help as many children as she could. Her and Stuart are still living peacefully with Michael and Deshawn, as well as their other foster children.